Thanks everyone for joining this LSAP Associates webinar. We have an exciting presentation today hosted by our Associate Director of LSAP, Ryan Cohn. Ryan will highlight some productivity boosting features the LSAP team has implemented in customer orgs recently. If you like what you see and you'd be interested in reproducing these in your org, please reach out to your LSAP consultant and you can reference this webinar and we'll know exactly what you're talking about. Before we get started, just some housekeeping items. We aim to be interactive, so feel free to put, there's a chat feature, so feel free to use the chat feature. You're currently on mute, but you can raise your hand and I'll take you off mute if you want to ask a question, or there's also a Q&A box where you can type out a question, and I'll try to be monitoring that in the background throughout the presentation and let Ryan know if there's any questions. These features make it easier for us to track questions for everyone and make sure that everyone gets an answer. So if you're interested in hosting a future LSAP Associates webinar, feel free to reach out to your LSAP consultant, or you can email me, Shannon@litify.com, and we'll get that conversation started. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let me just get my screen shared here. So we got just a few items that we're going to go over. Let me just get this open up here real quick. So what we're going to go over first here is just 3 quick items here. We're going to go over and kind of qualify with this. A lot of these firms, I think, might have 1, 2, or 3 of these items in here. But these are kind of some older ones that we've worked with for quite a bit. At least 2 of them are kind of a newer one. So if you're familiar with these, feel free to ask additional questions about additional functionality we can do with them. Else, if you're not familiar with them, see if there's something we can definitely help you out with. First one we're going to go over is our Declarative Lookup Rollup Summaries. It is an absolute mouthful. You may have heard us kind of refer to this as a couple different ways, either called DLRS, which is still a mouthful, or just, we shorten it typically to rollup summaries. This is a great way to kind of get a combination of records, related records, kind of summed up, or some other logic kind of pushed up to a main record. So we're going to start off with that one first, and I'll try to help explain it a little bit more. So we're going to start here on one of our example matters. So a good use case for this that we've seen, and I just kind of came up with some. We use this for all kinds of different use cases. One of the main ones are kind of 3 different items that we're going to use it for. Number 1 being is we want to see really quickly on either on a record or in a report, number of open tasks related to a matter. Usually you'd have to kind of go over, look in your activity timeline, see how many there are. You can run a report, group by the given matter, related record, see it that way. It gets to be, you can do that kind of in a few different ways, but if you really want to report on it really easily, as well as be able to show it on the record itself. So we have it kind of listed just down here as a new field. It's just a number field. If you want to be able to calculate that, we can use the Declarative Lookup Rollup Summaries to easily calculate that. 2 other ones that we want to using for this demo here are the highest negotiation and lowest negotiation. This is going to pull in the amounts from the negotiation records, and it's going to automatically, via these lookup rollup summaries, take whatever's the highest amount and put it in the highest negotiation, and the lowest and put it in the lowest. So you don't have to do anything else. There's no flows involved. Simply all you need to do is create negotiation records, enter in the amounts, and whichever record is the highest will automatically get populated down that amount, pushed to the highest, and same thing with the lowest. The way this works in the background is this is actually a third-party tool as well that we install in just about every single firm we work with. We use it quite a bit. It just happens to be, you can kind of find it in our little app builder here. It's just called Manage Lookup Rollup Summaries, or you can even search for Declarative Lookup Rollup Summaries, and you'll actually be able to launch the entire app. But this takes us here to our Lookup Rollup Summaries. We have a list here of all the ones we already have in the org. These are all ones we have built out for our financials package already in here to demo with. And these are the top 3 new ones that we've built out for this demo. So the way this works is this is essentially all you really need to configure for this to work. For a number of open tasks, we simply say, what is our parent record? Where do we want to put the final number on, which would be our matter. The child record, meaning which is the child object that we want to do any of the calculations on, which would be our task. How do we relate those two fields? On the task object, this is called the what ID. And then is there any other criteria we want to use to say only count these records? So this is where we're going to put where the status does not equal completed, meaning anything that's open. If it's not completed, we're going to assume it's open. You can get really specific in here with this criteria to really narrow down some additional items here. Further down here, these other key fields, what field we want to aggregate. Right now, in our example here, doesn't really make too much of a difference because we're ultimately going to be using the operation here that's called count, where we're actually not going to count or do any kind of math operations on any kind of number fields. Instead, we just want to count the number of records. So really in here, you can type in any field on the task that you want to use. And at the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a count of the number of records. So this aggregate operation is kind of cool. You can do a bunch of different options in here. Mostly what we tend to use is this count or the sum feature. Sum will just do just that. It'll sum up all of the related number fields, currency fields. We often do this for total for like expenses, damages, what's been paid, what's been outstanding, a lot for that. And then count is what we usually will use as well to count the number of a given record. We use counts a lot when we're working with like goals or anywhere we just need to see straight the number of records. Then finally, we have what we call an aggregate result field. This is effectively where do we want to store the result of this operation here. And this is going to be on your parent object. So we created a new just number field on the matter called open tasks that's going to drop the number in there. Same thing then here, just kind of real quickly, we have our negotiations to show kind of how it's set up. Same thing, parent, child, relationship, the field we want to count. This time we're going to we do need to make sure we're explicit with the field. We want to calculate the amount field. And then we're going to use the operation that's called max. This will effectively do every time you update a negotiation, it'll look at all of those related negotiations, whatever is the highest value, and it'll store that into this highest negotiation field on the matter. Exact same thing with lowest negotiation. All we're doing is we're using this min function instead, which is going to find the minimum number. So really cool here. These are all fully activated. They're running in real time. They even have a new little wizard that'll kind of help guide you through a lot of this that lets you point and click instead of having to enter in the API names of everything. It makes it a lot easier. How it works kind of though in real time. So first thing we're going to do is count the number of open tasks. So we're just going to go here and say an open task here. We're going to set it as a due date. Let's say we're overdue and we set it on the 1st. Our status is going to be not started and we're just going to hit save. If we see down here, you'll notice we actually had some other tasks in the background because this is a new record. So we didn't update this since we've loaded in this lookup. But now it's going to show us we actually have 10 tasks that are open. And as those tasks get completed, so for example, if we come up here and we close out this task, and if we refresh this, make sure it goes away, we'll likely have to just refresh this page here real quick. And that should go back down to 9. So it's always going to be updated. And again, no flows, no automation needed, just that lookup summary. Same thing with our negotiations. Keep things a little quicker here. If we just edit an existing negotiation, we'll say, actually, this was $5,000 that we did. We're going to save that. And if we go back to our matter, we look down here, if you notice, both were automatically updated. So now we have 100,000 and 5,000 as our lowest. And if we go and look at our related negotiations, you'll see if we sort by our amounts, 5,000 is indeed the lowest and 100,000 is the highest. Again, no other automation needed for it. We just have to set up those lookup summaries and create those additional fields as needed. Lots of other applications you can use this for. Like I said, we use this for quite a bit of our firms and for a lot of different scenarios where we don't want to run any kind of additional flows. Nice thing too is with these, since we're actually updating fields on the matter and it's a standard field, we can actually use those updates to trigger additional automation. So for example, if you did want to say you had a total number of expenses on the given record, and when that total number of expenses exceeds a certain value, requests an authorization to go beyond that, we can actually trigger off of the update of that field based on these lookup rollup summaries. So they're super powerful little tool that you can use. Next item here, I believe we get, again, this is one that we've set up for quite a few firms that has been tweaked over the years. Cloning to companions, specifically cloning to companions on the matter object. We do have a similar functionality on the intake. It's not quite as robust since we don't use intakes quite as much or as long. But our clone to companions on the matter is built out to be a lot more. The way this works, so the way it ends up looking on the front end here is if we go, we usually put it as a new tab listed here on our matters. We usually call it companions. In here, you're going to see we already have a few other companions created, and this uses the standard Litify companions functionality. So nothing there in the background that's unique or new. If you don't have any companions already, you can search for any existing matters and add them as a existing matter on here to effectively link them as companions instead of using the standard Litify companion component as well. So it makes it really easy that you can use this one object altogether. So the way this works is you can actually select one or more of these companions, related companions, and after you have any fields related up here already created, you can actually click on this Clone to Companions button. And what it's going to do is it's going to pop up a new window, and this is configurable as to what you want to see here as objects to clone, as well as what fields you might want to clone over on the matter. And then we also have the ability within each and every single one of these records, we can define what fields we may want to clear out. So specifically with some of these instances, we may want to, for example, on the insurance record, clear out the policy number. If each and every users might have a different policy, but we know they're all United Health, you can choose to clear out the those policy numbers, so it'll kind of reset it, and it's going to be something that's not unique per se, or that is going to be unique per individual matter. We can clear out those fields. But the nice thing about this as well is you can click through and select either unselect everything. So if you don't want to move all of these fields between matters, we can then also select individual of these related records down below and choose to clone any one of these over to all of these selected records that we've already selected in the background. So all three of these matters, we can hit clone. And what this is going to do is it's going to effectively create that task record, those three task records on each one of these related matters. So if we were to open up one of these other related companions, we should be able to see here, and let's see if they have any other tasks. You'll see here that we have new tasks that were loaded in here. Actually, hard to tell because we already had some others in here, but I know test was one that we had more recently just selected on there. And it'll clone them over, like I said, directly over here into our related companions. So it makes it really easy if you're doing a lot of data load or a lot of input on a your main matter here. You can then do a lot of that work on just a single record. Come here, as long as they're all selected by cloned or companions, click on our clone to companions, and you can easily replicate that same work across all of your other companion records. So it helps to save a lot of time. Kind of look in the back end kind of how this is managed as to kind of what you can do. We have a custom metadata is what we use to manage our companions cloning. So that can actually just be found under our custom metadata types. And we have this companion cloning. And this is all part of our extensions package as well, by the way, which has a few other kind of features in it as well. So if we click on this manage records, this is going to take us and show us all of the objects that we have the ability to clone from. And this is, like I said, able to be edited. We have two that we have kind of in place to begin with, our insurance and roles. But beyond that, you're able to create any additional related records that you might want to clone. You can add them in here. For example, if we click into any one of these, you actually have the ability to further tweak this, give it a name, what object do you want to clone. This is going to show up on our matter versus our intake. You can actually then put in additional conditions here to show what records are actually going to be able to show up in that selection. So you can get a lot more granular to say which ones you want to show up. What field do you want to display to the end user in that selection window? How is this record related to the given matter? So we know kind of what matter fields we need to update. And then a cool thing over here is this is where you can put on clear fields. So as long as you put in a comma separated list of the API names of fields you want to clear, such as policy number on insurance records, you can put those over here and it won't copy over the values of those specific fields, but it'll copy over every single other field over to the cloned record itself. So it's kind of really cool, really powerful what you can do here. And like I said, you can manage this on individual levels here. So you can manage what objects you want to offer up to be able to clone, as well as the individual records if there's any major exclusions, and then you can clear out certain fields as you clone them over as well. So really cool, super powerful little tool. Makes it if you're working with specifically any kind of cases that include multiple clients, and or it's also really powerful for working with any kind of mass tort cases as well, where you want to kind of clone over similar information across them. And then lastly, this is one that's a little more unique. I believe we only have worked with this really in 2 firms. I don't know, one of them's on here as well, so it's going to be a little bit of a review there. But this is a really cool feature that we've had, like I said, from a couple firms have requested this. We've done something similar for a few others, but this is effectively what we call just intake plans, which is a different take on our matter plans, which we mostly just use our matter plans in the background, but allow you to kind of look at them and access them and interact with them in a very similar way on the intake side. So it's a really nice way to give some structure to your intake process, specifically if you have a little bit longer process that you have a few more steps you want to go through, if there's specific tasks that you always want to get created within when you hit those certain steps, and be able to kind of see along the way. Often what we work with firms on this is we don't have a full-on plan, but we put in automation in the background automatically to say when a status equals this, always create these tasks, which works. But if you want to be able to have a little bit more granularity to say, I want to use this plan versus this plan, and or if you want to be able to add specific task sets, working with intake plans helps to give you a little bit more granular control over that specific intake process. So the way this works, so we go over and take a look at our intake. We just added on here a new little tab over here called Intake Plan. This is, by the way, a custom screen flow. It's not any kind of standard Litify component, so it's going to look different than our matter plans, but most of the functionality is all still there. So initial kind of steps here we have just this little drop down that'll say select what intake plan you want to use. Currently, we only have one plan loaded that's able to be used for intakes. But nice thing is you can define on the plan level which plans you want to use on the intake versus on the matter. So you're going to filter out all of your matter plans. So you're only going to see your given intake plan here. Nice thing too is we actually use our matter plans as the core object to store everything about that intake plan. So it makes it very similar, same functionality. You can create your own matter plan, create all of your stages, the order that you want to use those stages. And then within each stage, you can create your default matter tasks. Notice we're not going to use it on matters, but the same functionality still exists. So when you go on the actual task itself, you can set what you want the task to be called. You have the option over here to either set it at stage activation or on a matter field. Again, we won't use matter fields themselves, but we do have a new custom field that we added on here that's called intake field. where you can list out the API name of the specific date field on the intake that you want to use as your value when defining when the task should be due. So we're trying to use as much as possible the standard default tasks and matter plan components so you can manage these plans in a very similar way to your matter plans. And as well, with all of this, we kind of built out a little bit further to allow you to use matter teams as well on the intakes. So that's real simple, is we also have on the record here, we have what we call just a new lookup field that looks up to the matter team itself. So you can set to say, what is the team I want to use on this record? Again, these can be individual teams. They can be whatever teams. You manage them just as you normally would a matter team. You set a user and you set a role. Those roles can then correspond to who you want this task to be assigned to. So as long as you have a matter team member on that intake with that same role that's already in place, as we create these tasks, we will look up to see, is there a user with that role on that intake team? If so, they'll be assigned this task. If not, we're going to default it, same as on the matter, and assign it to the intake owner instead. But otherwise, like I said, we kind of try to use the entire matter backend for all the management of maintaining these intake plans. So we initially already set here our intake team. We don't have the related list up here, but there is a related list that you can see all of your intake team members as well to be able to manage them, edit them, change them, add new ones that we can add to the page layout. And then we come over here to our intake plan. So if you notice, we haven't done anything yet here. We haven't set a plan. We're just going to go ahead and keep our intake demo plan set. Click on our save plan, save stages. And we're going to come over here. And if you notice, it's going to kind of reload. And we have this path bar. Got to do a little more work on here for that initial stage. But if we click on this one more time here, what it's actually going to do is it's going to set this first stage. And if you notice, this looks very similar to our matter plans. It's going to set this to show we're now currently in our intake questionnaire stage. We did have one task that was going to be created from that. So if we refresh down here, you're going to see Hannah has one upcoming task. And if you notice, it was assigned to Hannah and not myself as the intake owner, because Hannah is listed on the back end as part of that matter team, that intake team, as the paralegal. So she was automatically assigned that task, and we set it to be due today because we set it at the stage activation. So if we look here at this task, stage activation, 0 days due. We do have then, if we go back one more, on our next stage, we have a task that is set to be created off of the incident date. And this is going to be set to be created 5 days after that incident date. You notice over here, we still have to select an actual matter field. You can select any field, doesn't really matter. We're actually going to instead, on the intake side, look up to see whatever this field is and value is. So if you go back to our intake, let's just make sure we actually have an incident date set. We do. If you don't have a set, unfortunately, we have it right now currently defaulting to not set a due date. You can, since it is a complete custom flow, if there aren't any dates set, we can have it default to a different value as well. So if we go back to our plan, and if we go here, this is going to show us our same list of our stages you see up here within the same order. So we can go now here to our next stage and say, actually, this is my stage I want to move to. Or if you wanted to, you also have the same option to mark this stage as complete. So we can just click on this one here. It's going to automatically reload, and now we're in our qualification stage. So now if we refresh our task down here, you'll be able to see that we have our new task that got created. And if you notice, it was due yesterday. We had that incident date set as the first, and then we had our task being due 5 days after that incident date, which would put it to be due yesterday. So really nice and dynamic that you can still set those dynamic fields based off of existing intake date fields as well. And then you can kind of go through here. If you did have different plans, you do have the ability to set a different plan and save it, and it'll kind of restart this entire plan from that new plan you have there and give you a new set of stages. This is outside of, or can kind of work in conjunction with your overall status up here. So you can still keep the same kind of status as your main kind of intake statuses, but then you can have a separate plan down here you can kind of work through at the same time. And again, all of this is completely fully customizable. It's built out with a series of screen flows as well as some back-end triggered flows that will go through, find the right stages, find the right tasks, do all of the calculations and all the assignments in the background. So pretty much every step of this process is fully customizable to be able to match out with whatever your specific firm's needs are with that. And I believe that is kind of rushed through real quick there. I tend to talk a lot more quicker. Anyone have any questions about any of these three features that we just went over? And if not, I'm happy to go into a little bit more technical and kind of show you how this intake plan is kind of built out on the back end in the flow side of things as well.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, or you can also, there's a reactions little button. You can click that and raise your hand, and I'll take you off mute if anyone wants to ask a question.
Awesome. So we'll go here in the meantime. Let me show you how our intake plans are set up. So like I said, this is a series of 3 different flows that actually allow this entire functionality to happen. We have our 3, I think that one will open in a second. Our main flow that we're using is just this, our screen flow here that starts everything off. This is effectively just going to load in every single time. It's going to load, find all of our stages, add them all to collections, all right before we actually even load the screen. Main reason being is we use a couple third-party components on here as well, one of which is called this dynamic flow progress. That'll actually show our progress bar across the top that we can dynamically generate. So we have to kind of be able to see which stage we're in as active, and then what is our total number of stages we want to go to. And this is where you're seeing our plans and our stages. And we also have a really cool button or a bar at the bottom here component that we use in a lot of different screen flows that lets us create custom buttons to do various things with them. These don't have to be necessarily navigation buttons, but oftentimes you can create these as just kind of clickable buttons that if you click on it, another section in that same screen pops up to be able to enter information from. So this is a really kind of cool, powerful component we use in a lot of different of our automations, specifically for screen flows. So this is where you're going to see our 3 buttons, and you can create additional buttons as well as needed with this functionality. But essentially, once you get past that first screen, this is where it gets a lot more complicated. We have to actually go through here and look to see were you saving a change or were you wanting to add a task set? I don't think I showed the task set side, but if we go here on the front end, we click on add task set, it's going to give you a list of all of the task sets that you have the ability to create. And effectively, you can select one here, click on next, and it's going to go through and add. That's not the right task set for intakes, so it's going to error it on me. But it'll effectively go through and add all of those tasks that were from that task set to this intake as a one-time load as well. So we're kind of going through here real quick. This is the least amount of the actual automation. When we actually change the plan, we're setting the plan and the stage just as an update on the intake, and that's it. These aren't actually triggering. We're not triggering the actual creation of the tasks within this step. Where we do that is actually in a record triggered update on the intake level itself. Reason being is we can then use this as a few different ways. If you were to manually update those fields as a pick list field, for example, we'd still be able to trigger it the same process in the background to be able to set those tasks. But this is effectively where we're doing a couple of things. If you set that initial intake team, we're going to go ahead and create all of the intake team members listed out here and assign them to that intake as well. Further down, if you were to change the stage, this is where we're going to go look. We're going to set the right status. If you have any mappings between the stages and the status, we can either choose to keep them the same and or do some other mappings with that. Then we're going to look up the intake related plan, what stage we're on, any task that they're in, and then this is where it gets a lot more complicated. We're going to loop through each and every task and kind of go down the path here, see if there's a team member with that role, assign them, see if the due date is. If it's due from an actual intake field, we actually going to call this new action we have in here. This is a really cool, powerful action that lets you actually look up the value of a specific field on the record and pull it back. So from a more technical side, usually when you're referencing a field in a flow, you have to define the specific field that you want to use and pull it back. If we have the option, but since we want to be able to say you can enter any field on the intake that we want to use, this quick little action here lets you dynamically pass in the name of the field that you want to look up, and it'll return the value of that specific field. So you can do one action to look up any value of any field on that related record in one step versus having to have a decision and say, did you select this or this or this? Kind of compiles everything into one little step in here. So really kind of powerful tool that we've used in a few different scenarios as well. From all that, we do our calculations to create the tasks. And then at the very end, after all those tasks are gone through, we end up creating the tasks at the very end in kind of one full step. So this is a kind of a real streamlined, really kind of quick and efficient way to go through and create these tasks as well. And this same process we've actually used as well, can be used on the matter side as well, if you want to kind of do any more complicated set of tasks or anything on the matter side, pretty much anywhere you might want to create tasks as well. And then the last component we have here is the adding the task set. It's very similar to the matter plan switch, as well as the intake or after save. It's effectively going to go through, show you the tasks for the task set, and then it's going to come in through here and do the exact same functionality to create those tasks based on that criteria. But pretty much almost identical to our after save flow here on the intake side. Awesome. Well, that is about all I have for this webinar here. So happy to go through any questions we have about any of these processes, as well as about kind of just generally any other flow, any other automation questions that anyone might have about anything specific to their firms, or just any other questions you might have as well.
Not seeing anything yet.
Say it, quiet bunch here today.
Yeah. Oh, you have a
Awesome.
request for the companion cloning already. So.
That's a very popular one that we actually do quite a bit. So definitely be able to get that one installed for you. And actually, it looks like I think I will be the one installing that for you. So we'll get that in there for you. And I know Shannon mentioned it earlier as well. We do like to have these sessions every now and then with some led by our firms as well. So if you ever have any desire to kind of help show off your firm or some feature that your firm has set up, we would love to work with you to help kind of show that off to a session like this, to be able to have it show off to other people if you're interested in that. We're happy to help with that. We can pull out any of those components kind of and push them over into a demo org, so you're not showing any of your live client data. But it helps you kind of show the power of the LSAP community as well, and get some of that more interaction between the different law firms and some collaboration as well. So awesome.
All right. All right. I think we'll wrap it up. So thank you, Ryan, for presenting.
For sure.
Yeah, and like Ryan said, if anyone's interested in these, definitely talk to your consultant or submit a case. And if you're interested in hosting a webinar in the future, you can do the same. Talk to your consultant or reach out to me directly. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.